This is episode 25. Today's conversation carries a bit of rhythm, a bit of ritual, and a lot of truth. My guest is the founder of Really Healed. He's a recovery practitioner of Irish origin where storytelling, struggle, and straight talking have always walked hand in hand. I first observed our guest making real headway on TikTok, not by chasing trends, but by naming things people feel and rarely hear said out aloud. His work cuts through performance healing and asks a harder, older question. Are you actually changing? Or are you just coping better? So wherever you are, take this as an invitation to pause, listen, and reflect. So, with these words as flowers of introduction, I'm delighted to welcome Richard the Mouse Williams.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And it's great to be here with you this morning. How are we doing? Let's get into it.
Indeed. So, before the work, before Really Healed, before the platform, what in your own life first showed you that something had to change, not eventually, but fundamentally?
Leon, I could spend 3 hours on this one, but we'll try and cut it down to a couple of minutes. I grew up in a nice part of Dublin, and from the outside, it would be said that I had a privileged upbringing, I suppose. Good parents, a nice house. There was a car in the driveway. We went on a couple of holidays a year, and my parents split up when I was very young. And my father had his own business and worked away, and my mother had a bit of a problem with alcohol and what looked like. So I always had a stepmother and a stepfather that I can remember. And it looked like the perfect family and the perfect homes. But it wasn't. It was chaotic behind closed doors. And I suppose that kicked something off in me where I began to rebel and fight the family system. And what started off as a bit of a party, or I now see it as the escape, uh went from party drug use to chaos. And very quickly in my kind of late teens, found myself caught up in heavy addiction. And I jokingly tell people that I was a pharmaceutical entrepreneur, to pay for these things. And my father was a great role model, I suppose, and he always taught me to, if you want something in life, son, you get up and you work for it. So having a job and working was never a problem. So I always got up and functioned and had a job. Um, and the other piece was a sideline, it was a side hustle, to pay for stuff. But it really quickly catches up on you, and brought me to a place where I couldn't cope, when I felt like, if this is what life has to offer, I don't want it. And there was lots of stuff that had happened during childhood. There was a couple of different types of abuse, and different stuff that had happened, and I couldn't figure all this out in my own head. Didn't want to talk to anybody about it, didn't want to admit to it. When I was 25, the most unlikely thing on the planet happened, where my father took his own life. I arrived down to his house and place of work, which was our business at the time, and went in and found him. And, although suicide had probably crossed my mind a couple of times, with a few failed attempts, uh, I saw the devastation and the hurt that brought to the family, the friends, everybody that surrounded us. And I thought, fuck, that option isn't open to me anymore. Now what am I going to do? And I lived in a really dark place for another 3 or 4 years. And drugs to me were just, I'd been to see all the doctors, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the counselors, the therapists, and they weren't able to fix me. Nothing seemed to work. All the prescriptions definitely didn't work. Um, and to some degree, they did until they didn't. The other drugs worked. But I was left feeling empty, broken. And now what do I do? Because the drugs now don't work anymore. They're not helping you. It's not. This isn't it. What do I do here? So yeah, by the time I was just turning 30, I was like, what door do I have left open for me here? Nothing. I mean, I'd held down jobs and, I had some good people around me, but it was me that had the problem, nobody else. How do I now fix me? And I suppose that opened the door to a brand new journey. And I always thought, I had the answers to everything. I had some really clever people around me. And yeah, I was given great advice, but could you take it? No. So, I went into a place of, okay, maybe I don't have all the answers and maybe I haven't got it right. And maybe I need to try something different. And yeah, so I went into treatment. It wasn't my first time. I'd been in treatment 4 or 5 times, but I went into treatment in 2008. It was a very long residential program, and something slowly started to change. And it was a very slow process. I thought I'd never get out of the place. And I also thought uh, I needed to live there forever nearly. I didn't want it to end. But that was the start of the change. And yeah, it changed a lot of things. It changed my career path. It changed my whole life, really, I suppose, and by that stage, I had a daughter. She was 6 or 7 years of age. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to put 110% into it, and something needs to radically change. So, I was thrown out of school at 16. I'd know, not sure what they call it in the UK. I'd no leaving cert. Um, I have dyslexia, and I'd struggled with school and stuff like that. Um, but the new career, I suppose, I wanted to reach out and help others. I wanted to give back and show people that change was possible. And so I needed to go back and study, or go and study. Um, Initially really struggled with that stuff. And people said to me, because I, of course, being me, went in and went, right, okay, how do I create my own treatment center here? How do I run this service? And they were like, what's your credentials? What's your academia? And I said, well, I don't have any, but I could run this place, and they were saying, yeah, well, go and get yourself a few bits of paper and come back to us. So, had to go down the academic route and go to college and, really struggled with that stuff. But thankfully, we're living in an age, Leon, where technology is slowly kicked in. And I picked up a program called Dragon Dictate, right? I put a headset in, I talked and it typed. And that's how I got through college, and I came out the far end after 7 years with 2 degrees in the masters. So, because people told me I couldn't, you wouldn't be able to do that, you know. So wait till I show you. And I suppose I always had that work ethic thing where, if you want something, you get up in the morning and you go out and you get it. And yeah, so I started working with homeless services as a volunteer. Went off and just done, normal work. I was a painter and decorator for a year or two while I was going through college, paid the bills. And the treatment centre I'd been in after about 2 years asked me would I like to go back and volunteer. I went and done that. I then got a part-time job with them and a full-time job, and then got promoted and started a new outreach service for them on the streets, and liaising with the prison services and local addiction services, taking in referrals and stuff. And um, yeah, I knew then within a couple of years, this is really where my heart is. This is what I want to do. And so I then moved into Dublin city centre with one of the biggest homeless and addiction services in Ireland, and set up and ran a service for them for a few years. Moved jobs then into mental health, severe mental health, and jumped, yeah, between a couple of different jobs, between homeless services and addiction and mental health and social care settings, I suppose. And I always had this thing that I wanted my own service. I wanted my own. I could see all the, I suppose, when you work for an organization, you see the policies, the procedures, the box ticking, the form filling. Um, a client comes in and they do an assessment with, you know, somebody, and then they get moved to somebody else, and then they get moved to somebody else. And by the time they go around the houses, did they really get to the crux of what the issue was with the person? And um, yeah, so I was like, okay, I think I need to go out on my own here, but what does that look like? And the fear of it, and not having the regular wage. But the mission at the end of the day is, uh, do I have what it takes to help somebody else change their life the way my life was changed? So I suppose that's yeah, the long and short of me. And that took. So I went into treatment in 2008 and started my own business last year. So that was about a 16, 17 year journey. Um, but I really feel that I can have an impact, and being able to share the lived experience and that peer to peer piece, and being very open to whatever it is that works for the person. So a very person centered approach in what I do to everything, because I know when I tried to fix myself, when I went to particular places or services, they seemed to work off one model. And if you didn't buy into that or believe in it, well, tough on you go. And even going into treatment, you meet so many people. I used to laugh working in services when somebody would come in and they'd say, "Well, were you ever an addict?" And I'd say, well, "Does that matter?" Like, not to fob them off, but does that matter? And they'd say, "Yeah, well, I want to be able to identify with you." And I'd say, "No problem. So, how many brothers and sisters do you have?" "I have five." So I've only three. "And what football team do you support?" "Oh, I'm Liverpool, right? I don't. Well, actually, I'm not even into football. Um, okay. And where did you grow up in such and such an area?" "Yeah, no, I lived 50 miles away." "So what have we got in common?" "Nothing, except we both use the same drug." So what does it matter really? At the end of the day, we're completely different people. We just turn to a particular drug to try and help fix us. So does it really matter that, okay, big whip de do, we both took the same drug? Well, how does that fix the problem? So I was very open to trying lots of different things, being very open to lots of different approaches, and knowing that in order for somebody to restore themselves, and that's what I see recovery as. It's a restoration. It's not. I don't even like the terminology that's used these days. Recovery. I'm in recovery, and you have those arguments. Well, I'm recovered, um, but I'm saying my father's business was classic and vintage cars, right? So we'd have all these lovely old bangers come into the place, and you'd spend weeks stripping them down, and cutting pieces out of them and welding new pieces in and painting them and polishing them up and bringing them back to life, proper restoration,
Yeah.
And I see recovery as that, but in that, that car needs to be checked, and you need to check the pressure of the tires every now and again, and you need to change the oil and the filters, and give the spark plugs a rub every now and again. There's maintenance needed to be able to keep the thing running. You want to be able to go out and turn the key and it'll go. So I see recovery as that really. Um, yeah,
Well, that's a package of thoughts and feelings that you've given to me through that journey. I think first of all, thank you for sharing that with us and our listeners. And there's a couple of things that jumped out to me is the humor as a sort of defense mechanism. You used that term, pharmaceutical entrepreneur. That's thinking about my own journey. That's a very, very Scottish way to sort of package up your own flaws, right?
as I said to you at the beginning, what looked like from the outside, that I had a privileged upbringing. My stepfather he's a West Brit, very awfully absolute gentleman, not behind closed doors, but in public, and very highly educated man, and held some really big jobs over the years. So he was a diplomat at one stage, and a business advisor to Ukraine when they broke away from Russia back in the early 90s. One of his later jobs was he was the business director for the IPU, the Irish Pharmaceutical Union, in Ireland. So my midterms from school, I'd go and sit in his office, and I was surrounded by businessmen and high powered people, and I'd be sitting there reading the MIMS,
Yeah.
the telephone directory of drugs. Because it would tell you not just the product, but all the effects that it might have and what it contained and stuff like that. Um, and it gave me that slight advantage out on the street, that I knew what I was talking about, and I knew what worked and what didn't work, and how it worked, and how long it would work for. Um, and at the time when you're young, you think, this is the business, but realistically, it's not. And but I take that knowledge today, and I suppose I use it to my advantage in that, I know how to support and help people come away from that stuff and turn that around. Because really at the end of the day, when somebody comes to me and they say, do you specialize in, or do you help people with, and they'll mention, say heroin or uh, cocaine or alcohol, and the substance isn't the problem.
Yeah.
It's why are you using the substance in the first place? It doesn't. I was working with somebody yesterday with a gambling problem. And gambling's not the problem. It's what you're running from is the problem. Um, and I suppose the joy of my job is that I get to show people these things. I get to explore those things. I get to open people's minds up to things. We think we have a problem with something, whatever the substance is or the topic is, but it's never that. The problem is never the problem. It's always something behind it or before it, that led up to that. Um, and being able to open people up to that. And I think we spoke for a minute before we started here about um, the way I explain things to people, and I break it down into a nice, simplistic, edible format, that it's not too complicated. And I remember being in college, and I love learning today. I'm always on a course, or continuous professional development. But um, I hear these big words and I get something explained to me that I have to stop and sit and think for 10 minutes till I figure it out in my own head as to what exactly that means. And then being able to take that and bring it to somebody in a very edible format, something that's tangible and that they can work with. That's the piece of my work that I love. Um, and I suppose the other thing is, I can sit there at times and uh, work with somebody and they'll tell you their story and they're almost expecting you to say or be shocked by how difficult it was for them. But when you have that lived experience and you know that there's no pain, that you can work through it. You can get there. There's nothing that can't be fixed or restored or turned into I mean, what do we want at the end of the day? We just want to have a fully functional, happy life, don't we? And we're not going to be happy every day of the week. I totally get that. Life is life. Um, I don't want my neighbor to run over the cat, but that might happen. I mean, shit, let's call it what it is. Shit happens. So life is life. It's not always going to be a bed of roses. So it's about what do we do with that and what does that look like and how do I make it something that I don't need to run or escape or, uh, you know, end up having to take something or to escape into something that potentially is going to destroy my life. It's going to take that away from me. I had my daughter here last night with my grandchild, right? And my grandchild is 13 weeks old, right? A newborn baby. And it's such a beautiful thing, right? And there's a couple of things while she's here that I always remember. So there's something fundamental when the baby is here. Number one, I wouldn't have that child in my life if I was living the chaotic madness that I used to do.
Yeah.
And number two, the basics. She needs to be nurtured. She needs to be loved. She needs to be fed. She can't do anything for herself. She's so, innocent and, you know, even changing a nappy. And when you look at a baby, you almost forget that when we grow up, we're still looking for the same thing. We still want to be nurtured. We want to be cradled. We want to be loved. We want to be appreciated but how do we get that? And that's important. And there's an exercise I picked up off an American gentleman a couple of years ago. He was in recovery for many, many years until he passed away. And he taught me this lesson. And he said this to me one day, and I never forgot it. And he used to repeat it to me all the time. And he said, when I wake up in the morning, I go into the mirror and the first thing I do is I look in the mirror and I say, I love you. Right? And I thought that was a bit odd the first time he said it to me. It was strange. Okay. And he said, I stand there and I look myself straight in the eyeballs and I say, I love you. And I mean it. And he said, the reason I do that is I need to acknowledge, not in an egotistical way, but I need to acknowledge that I genuinely love myself. And when I genuinely am in a place where I love myself, I then have the strength to go out and love others.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
And
thought, well, that's powerful. And we'd have meetings with the guy, every week or every other week or whatever. And at the end of every meeting, he always used to say, if nobody told you today, David loves you. Right. And I'd be like, wow. And I said to him after a couple of months of this happening, I said, why do you say that? And he said, I tell you I love you because I don't want it to be the last time that I see you.
hmm,
Right? And that really hit me. And love is a strange thing. We misuse the word. The English language has done a number on us, because I love a packet of crisps or a good takeaway, and I love Maseratis, and I love fast motorbikes, but that's not love, you know.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to bring ourselves back to. So, Leon, imagine a place where you were coming from when you were younger, when you were lost and broken and running from something you didn't even know what it was that you were running from. Did you feel loved? Did you feel held? Did you love yourself? We thought we did, but we didn't because we didn't know what it meant. We didn't know what it looked like. And being able to bring somebody on a journey, not only into restoration or recovery or whatever you want to call it, but to be able to bring somebody back to a place where they truly begin to love themselves. And as I said, not from an egotistical point of view, but when you can wake up and look yourself in the eyeball and say, I love you. Because you deserve to be loved.
Yeah.
Leon deserves to be loved today
Mm,
because you're you. And it's
mm.
okay to be you. There's nothing wrong with being flaws and all. Okay, because and excuse me, French, we fuck up every now and again. You
Yeah.
know,
Most days.
you're right, we do. We're human. We don't get it right all the time. But being able to wake up and say, okay, let's start again. Let's go again. Made a bags of that one. Let's go again. It's all right. And I I've grown to dislike the term, a relapse or you slipped or, although they grind me. It's called life. Okay, you made a bad decision, but you get to do it again tomorrow. You wake up again tomorrow and you go again. Um, so one of the things I try to do every day is I wake up in the morning time and I set myself 2 goals. And it's small stuff. It could be, I'm going to make sure my house is clean today, or I've made the dinner properly, or, or with work and stuff like that. But I set myself 2 goals every day. So when I put my head on the pillow at night, I can lie down and say, I've done them today. I've
Yep.
done that. Yeah, I've got that one. And the very rare occasion that I lie down and go, shit, I should have done that today and I didn't. Okay, well, it's just another goal for you to put on your list tomorrow. And so you know, um, I know the circumstances around, my father's passing, say, and I'm a huge advocate for mental health and suicide prevention and stuff like that, clearly. But you know, I um I realize when I wake up every morning I've been given a new opportunity. You
Yeah.
know, today is another day I have to go. And as I said to you, I was sitting here with the granddaughter last night. And I'm looking at her, and in my mind I'm saying, what do I get to leave this child with? Right? Because we'll go. It's nature, right? We're all going at some stage. It just doesn't need to be, sooner than it should have been, right? So, but what do I get? And so that drives me, and it gives me a bit of ambition and a bit of gusto, and um, to be able to put myself out there and share that with somebody else. It's a powerful thing, and that's part of like even the reason I reached out to you. I saw what you were doing yourself, with the podcast, and I'm sure you do loads of lovely stuff in the background as well. Um, and how important that is. There's a message there that people need to listen to and hear. And they need to. There's so many lost and broken stuff. I don't know about yourself. January and February over here in Ireland, personally, and people I know or that I'm directly connected to, I've heard of 6 suicides since January. Mental health services inundated. with people that they can't provide the services that are needed. But that tells me something, Leon, that there's a message there that people need to hear. So we need to keep doing what we're doing. Um, the world is massively changing very, very quickly. It's a very different world today than we grew up in 30, 40, 50 years ago. With technology, I was messing with my daughter. She's 26 yesterday, and she spent 20 minutes doom scrolling. And I messed with her, and I was saying, did you find it? And she went, find what, Dad? I said, whatever you're looking for, because you're
Yeah,
there the last 25 minutes. She was just, in a daze. Like, we were out getting scrapes on our knees and hanging out of trees and,
yeah,
doing knickknacks on somebody's door and
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
It's a different world. And we need to be aware of that. But there's also a piece where there's a social connection bit, and I'm not talking about social media. I'm talking about there's a social connection piece that a lot of people are missing. You know,
yeah.
COVID done us an injustice where we got used to sitting indoors and sitting behind the screen, and um, certainly in rural places in Ireland, the pub closed, the local pub, which you might say, well, that's not a bad thing, but it was Paddy the farmer's only place where he got to come down and talk to another human being for a few hours.
Yeah. It's a sense
And
of community.
100%, yeah, community. That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's a piece of that we're starting to miss. And it's beautiful to be able to jump online. I have friends all over the world, and I love it. Jump on a Zoom call and call my pals in Australia or in any part of the States or in Spain or wherever. But there's a community piece that we're slowly losing and missing. And there's a generation growing up through that where it's now creating um, mental health problems and struggles that never existed before. Um, and I suppose, yeah, it's important to me that we're in tune with that and that we know. And so it's lovely when I jump on TikTok and I doom scroll myself for 10 minutes that I come across the likes of this podcast, right? Or yourself, Leo, that in the midst of the doom and gloom and somebody being lost into something, that they hear a message somewhere to say, it's okay to love yourself. You know, I know
Yeah.
you're feeling like this right now, but there's another, there's a way out. Um, and to be able to challenge people and encourage them and give them the tools that they need to live an effective life. I
Because
don't.
that's as well, Richard, right? Is that people, that's part of the meaning of love as well, is to be challenged and for somebody to big bro or big sis you along the way as well. It's not all unicorns and puppies love. It's flaws. It's the fundamentals. It's the
Yeah,
failing. It's the getting back up. It's somebody saying to you sometimes, you know what? I've heard enough of your bullshit. For today, put it down, go have a rest, and we'll go again tomorrow. Kind of, it's all of that. And I wonder for you, like, and I don't want to touch upon such a difficult experience for you, but I just want to share that um, I lost my father in pretty tragic circumstances, quite young as well. And quite young in terms of the development of a man, because a man at 25, right, is
um,
still a big overgrown teenager, right? That's what we
yeah,
are. Let's be real about it.
yeah,
And I think that was my, when I lost mines at that young age as well, like that was my deterioration point. That's where the party really stopped. That's where the whistle and the glow stick disappeared, and that was my pathway down.
yeah,
And I wonder as well, for I always see a lot of young males, and I've worked in criminal justice settings, and I see that working with children and care leavers as well.
yeah.
Is there's a real fatherly gap right now, Richard, and I
Yeah.
wonder if that's something you've seen during your career and time.
110%, Leon. And one of the social care jobs I had was working with 18 to 23-year-olds that have come through the care system. And that fatherly figure, the big brother even, thing. Men learning how to be men or not learning how to be men and ending up in prison. Or, in the system. Um, and you touched on it a second ago. Love is not always, fluffy roses and boxes of chocolates. It's a kick in the backside and being told to cop onto yourself. Really, really important, and there's a couple of young men that I'm actually working with at the moment, and they're good guys. They didn't have it too rough as such, um, but again, missing the fatherly figure. And they don't get that. They don't understand it. They don't understand they are the way I mean, they do after working with me, but they didn't when they came to me. They were like, "I don't know what's wrong. I have this problem. I don't know why." And when you break it all down and you figure it out, and I when I hand somebody the information, I give them the brick, with a dicky bow on it. So I'll hand them the brick. There you go. There's a hard fruit for you to swallow. And, a gentleman taught me that years ago, you can throw bricks at people and hurt them, or you can put a dicky bow on it and hand it to them and they can build something with it, you know. So there's a way of delivering the truth. And in lots and lots of cases, in the homeless services, and I didn't like the term myself, but in homeless services that I worked in for many years, when a young lady would come in that was out on the streets and up to no good, and they would nod and say, "Oh, daddy issues,"
Yeah.
right? Nasty, right? But I mean, I understand what they meant by that, you know. There was a hurt, broken young lady that didn't have the upbringing she deserved, and I know it's not a nice way to put it at all, but very real. And very true and honest, because it's amongst us everywhere, unfortunately. And that shows me that, there's a responsibility there for you and me, and that we show up, and regardless of a broken relationship with an ex-partner or whatever it may be, which was myself. And the privilege, that I had last night with my daughter. I mean, my daughter was on the phone to me, on a video call 10 minutes before I was talking to you, showing me my granddaughter, and I, 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 I honor that. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a huge piece there where men and women, need that fatherly figure. They need that, and the mother definitely has that role to play, but the dads of this world have a huge role to play. Um, and look, where that doesn't exist, Leon, or where it disappeared, or left too early, whatever way that comes, that it's replaced with something. I have some great men in my life today. People that I look up to. I have a guy in the States. I've never met him physically. I call him Uncle Tom. Right, he's an ex Vietnam vet and an absolute legend of a man. Right, and he's 82 years of age, but he's a real father figure. He'll have the difficult conversations with me. He'll tell me to cop onto myself and stop being an arsehole, when I put stuff to him. Or he'll say, "Do you know what? I love you, Richard. I love you." And there's special moments,
Mm.
And so, yeah, definitely that's so needed. And you know, it, there's a huge lump of young men out there that they need an arm around their shoulder and a good hug,
And
uh,
and they need to learn how to take it as well. And
100%.
what really cut through for me is that somebody way smarter than me pulled me aside And I was kind of at that pre-contemplative, bordering on contemplative, so wanting to change my life. I was right on that border. And yeah, somebody said to me, like, your father is the last man who genuinely wants you to be better than him.
Yeah,
And that hit me like a steam train,
yeah.
that I would never have that again, or I thought I'd never have that again. But
Well,
you're right. There is ways you can build your community and your network
yeah,
to replace it.
yeah.
Although fundamentally, yeah, that is the truth and a universal truth, right?
It's not the same, but you need to be able to acknowledge it's the same, only different.
Yeah.
No, my father will never put his arms around me again, ever. But that's nature.
Mm.
And so, like, if my father was alive today, he'd be 80. You know, he's dead 22 years more. Yeah, 22 and a bit years. But like, he'd be 80. Would he be still alive at 80? Probably, probably not. Maybe, he'd be pushing it. So like at some point you're going to go. So, um, I have a gentleman, another older gentleman that I call Da.
Mm.
That's you know, uh, and we might only speak to each other 5, 6, 7 times a year. We jump on the phone and shoot the breeze, but somebody that I'm able to lean into and go to with difficult stuff and say, and I call him Dad. So I say, I'd ring him and say, Dad, what do I do here? Or, how do I handle this situation? Or what does this look like for you? Make sense of this for me. Um, and being able to do that. And I suppose my line of work that I charge people for is coaching and mentorship. What's that? You
That's
know,
exactly what it is, right?
it's been the big brother or the daddy figure and putting your arm around them and telling them it's okay.
Yeah.
We'll get through it. That there is a solution. There is a way you can do this. Now the challenge is how do we figure this out for you, and make it happen. Um, and that's the bit I love, and I think but before we pressed record, we spoke about this for a minute as well. I'd go to college and they explain the amygdala to you and they'd give you all the big words and the hippocampus and this is how this works and that's the way that chemical works in your brain and this is why and people don't need to know that stuff. They need to know the basics. They need if I sat there and gave a client the spiel of all that kind of stuff, you've lost them. So being able to sit with them and talk to them like a real human being and something that makes sense and be that uh, present person to them. And I need to know that stuff in the background. That's fine. I mean, that's my job, but my job isn't to relay that. My job is to, okay, how do I make this make sense to the person sitting in front of me that feels lost or broken or that the world is going to end when it's not?
That's yeah, that's something I've experienced and something that I've learned about my craft without sounding too pretentious around it. And that is, yeah, understanding the theoretical concepts. But then if you've got somebody who's been out rough sleeping all night, they've been half pissed to rough sleep because that's what it is. It's
Yeah,
been pissing with rain, they're freezing cold. Last thing they want to hear about is an amygdala or a hippocampus that they think is a hippopotamus. Like nobody wants to hear that shit.
yeah,
Your job is to translate that into a house of language for them that
yeah,
usually comes in the spirit of harm reduction, which is one, I'm going to help you feel safe for now. I'm going to give you a nice hot cup of tea. We're going to sit down for a second. I'm going to get you a chocolate biscuit and we're going to breathe. That's the very first thing we're going to do.
yeah,
And really, that's what it is for me, Richard. It's about, okay, you understand the concepts, but how do you apply that for everybody that you meet day
yeah,
on day, right?
yeah. I again through my professional career, I started studying trauma informed care, trauma aware care, trauma healing. I suppose about 8 years ago, and um, looking at the language that we use and what that looks like. And I remember sitting in a conference up in Belfast in 2019, and world leading experts from all over the globe coming in and speaking. And but there was a crowd in Belfast that had come through the troubles, and they were a childcare facility, right? And they had developed a trauma informed approach to what they done in childcare, and they had to go back and rewrite their policies. They had to go and speak to all the parents so that they were allowed to hug a child, so that they were allowed tell the child that they were loved. So it was okay for a staff member to tell a child, "I love you. You're loved." And I I was amazed by this because we're in the times we're in, and um you know we see all the craziness that goes on in the world, where it's not okay to pick a child up and hold them and nurture them and tell them that they're loved, that you can't give them a hug because of what has come before us, and yeah, child abuse and stuff like that. But the importance of that, and you know, uh, I found that fascinating, and it made me realize that the real piece that's missing sometime, and you touched on it there, that cup of tea, the chocolate biscuit, the just sitting there with somebody, no jargon, no waffle, no agenda. Are you all right?
Yeah, never
No.
mind your risk assessment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. All the
Sit down for a minute.
yeah, yeah. Right. That connection, that human connection, and they're never going to teach that in a college somewhere. There's no piece of paper that tells you you're qualified to do that. That's human connection. There's something so much more powerful in all of that. Um, and it goes so unnoticed and missed way too often. And people are so much underpaid by the organizations. You know, one of the best staff members I ever had, um, her words could cut you at times, right? She was one of those old mother figures, and she was from Dublin inner city, right? And she'd had it rough, and she'd experienced a lot of stuff in life. Um, and she'd a sailor's tongue on her. But but you bring in what would be perceived as the worst of the worst case of the streets and watch that woman work. You you couldn't pay for that. And you could never teach that to somebody else even. When I used to get young students in and nice little people in doing their work experience, I need to do me so many hours for college and da 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 da, and I'd say, sit with Mary, you know. And I'd see them shaking their head at the end of the day, going, "Why did he put me with her for the day?"
Yeah,
Because they'd have learned more off that lady in an 8-hour shift than they would have done in 10 hour or 10 years of college, you know. Um, but it's that human connection. It's being able to just sit with somebody, to land with them, to mind all the jargon and the theories and well, Freud said, or none of that, right?
yeah,
It's I love you.
yeah. And it's interesting. We've touched upon the figure of the father and the importance of that, and here we are landing right on Mary, who occupies the
Yes,
matriarch as well, right? And
yes,
the
yes.
all-seeing eye and that arm around her shoulder, which again pointing it to males directly, but this to human beings generally. We need both of them working in tandem, right?
Okay, Leon, I have to say, right, for myself, when things really started to change for me in my life, I slowly but eventually came around to the fact that I need to fix my mind, my body, my soul, and my spirit.
Mm,
Okay. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like something completely different for everybody, right? Now, I'm not talking about, so the mind, well, we know what the mind is. How do I fix that? What does that look like? That's our mental health. What, how do I get that right? And there's loads of things out there for that, whether it's talk therapy or you going to the counselor or whatever that may look like for you, right? The body, well, I mean, I just need to get me 10,000 steps in a day, don't I? And eat a bit better and stop with the junk food and stuff. And then there's the difficult piece of the soul and the spirit. And what does that look like? And this is the piece that creates a row for everybody. Um, and the soul for me is, that good feeling, that something just inside you that tells you the difference between right and wrong. That the thing that isn't your brain telling you that's not a good idea, son. Don't do that. You know, that to me is the soul and the spirit. Well, look, I have my own beliefs on that, and I suppose I have my own beliefs. I believe in a spiritual realm. I believe there's something out there greater than myself. You can call it what you want. People get offended if you use the word God. Jesus, don't say that. You know, right? But like, what does it matter? That I use a three-letter word to describe what that is. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not telling you to go to a particular church or have a belief in whatever. It's yours. That's your experience. That's for you. Um, Personally, I've had more than a few spiritual experiences. And that means something to me, and I can lean back on it when all else fails and say, I don't know what to do here. Help me out on this one. Um, and so for me, and this is what I would encourage people to just even explore, just be open to the realms of possibility in that there's something when something is wrong, there's four things we need to explore: the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit. And if you can in some way be in tuned or tap into those things, you're heading in the right direction. You're going to see progress.
Yes, and that's a good segue. Before we come to our closer questions or our call to action or something you'd like to leave behind as a clinical pearl, I've got a little bit of a mini quiz for you because I think I've got to know you a little bit within the context of this conversation, but there's always three pillars, I think, which give you special insight into somebody's personality and what makes them them. And I've
Mm.
called this the mouse's curiosities. So it's a rapid fire descent into taste, memory, and influence. And it'll be through the filter music, books, and movies. So I'm going to start with music. What song feels like it wired something into you before you had words for it, or an album, or an artist?
Bob Marley.
Mm.
Um, and Bob, there's no specific song. And I know he was probably smoked out of his brains half the time, but he was a great man to just promote love. Everything is going to be all right. you know, um, he promoted love, and I think it's one of the keys uh, to our existence. And how are babies made? Through love. How do we exist? Through love. How do we survive? Through love. How do we get through the tough times? Why do we feel grief when someone dies? Because of love.
Yeah.
You don't grieve over somebody that you didn't love. So love is the key to a lot of stuff. And for me in music, Bob, I mean, I don't listen to him every day, but if I was on a long drive somewhere, I'd always stick on a bit of Bob Marley. Yeah.
And it taps into them universals, and the very best elite musical artists, they tap
Mm.
into these universal themes.
Yeah.
And you never hear a Bob Marley song and go, "Oh, I was sadder for listening to that." It's always uplifting, right? It's
Mm.
always like,
Yeah.
okay, stoned or not. Um, what's a musical love that would surprise people? Like, what's a guilty pleasure for you? I'll share mine's first. I love Voulez-Vous by ABBA. but I'll blame my grandmother for that. Over to you.
Ed, David Bowie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any specific album or song or just
No,
Bowie
he
generally?
he 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 had that quirky, he was sitting on the edge of slightly batshit crazy, but made some great music. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Oh,
share the same birthday as well. So
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm definitely a Bowie aficionado, I think is the correct word.
yeah.
Um, on to books. So what book do you think it survived a small flood because you keep going back to it?
Um, I was never a big reader, and I okay, so I was never a big reader, and I do audiobooks or
Hmm,
podcasts and stuff like that, for myself for learning. Um, and this is a controversial one now. I'm going to pick two if that's okay.
cool.
So Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And then I'm going to be just because I like to be a bit edgy sometimes. The Bible.
Okay. Not edgy about the Bible, right?
So it's only the best-selling book in the world, but it, you can pick it up, and this is why, right? You can pick it up and just read a verse. And for me, I don't have to agree with it. I'm not talking about the church or religion or anything like that. You can pick it up and open a verse. It could be a psalm. Somebody wrote that 6,000 years ago, or 5,000, whatever it is, thousands of years ago, long before I was born. Somebody wrote that psalm. And I could just look at it and meditate on it. And, there's some funny bits in the Bible as well. There's bits you can go in and have a laugh at. Um, you know, uh, there's a few bits, about better to live on the corner of the roof than listen to a wife like a dripping tap or something, Do you know what I mean? Like, give me a giggle. So yeah, it doesn't have to be all serious stuff, But yeah, the Bible's a good one, just to dip in and out of, just to, yeah.
Yeah. And
I know I could do the hard sell and say we should be reading the book that I wrote, but yeah.
yeah, maybe that can come at the end, Richard.
I'm joking. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
For reference, I was thinking about cinema as well. So yeah, I like my music, I like my books, and not so much kind of Marvel cinema guy these guys, because a lot of the films getting made are kind of on that, or the mainstream ones are on that vibe. But what film did you watch that maybe set your internal north without you even realizing it?
If I don't sit and watch movies today, but very rarely, like almost never. I love real stuff. I love documentaries. I love true stories. So even if it's a reenactment of a true story or whatever. Um, and I don't ever remember even as a kid going, oh, I love whatever Star Wars or um. But for I suppose Quentin Tarantino. So
Mm.
something like Reservoir Dogs, or I can't even think of the name of the other one. You'll help me there. Um,
Pulp Fiction's a
Pulp,
classic.
Pulp Fiction, yeah, exactly, that kind of stuff. But is it the association of the madness that goes on in that I could identify with in some weird way? It's funny. There was a really popular Irish crime thing that came on telly here. A series or whatever, and a reenactment, of stuff. And it was very raw and street, and I couldn't watch it. It was too. I felt like I was in it nearly, really brought me back to it. I couldn't watch the thing, um, because I could identify with it so much. I could nearly see myself playing the part of one of the minutes, and I didn't like it. But yeah, I suppose the Quentin Tarantino movies, just the chaos and the madness and the reality. Um,
Yeah, he's yeah. There's a special crazy brain going on up there that's untapped, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, with that, that's been bang on an hour. I'm either a really crazy control freak or we done that naturally and organically. Maybe both, Richard, right?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
So yeah, this is a call to action. This is a closer. This is a dessert. This is a flambé, if you will. So if healing starts with honesty, what's the one question you think that every listener should be asking themselves tonight without doom scrolling, without any distractions at all?
Well, I would challenge anybody that listens to this, Leon, that it, either right now when they're listening to it or first thing in the morning, go in and look yourself in the eyeball in the morning and say, I love you. Love yourself. And, I've said this, so I'm repeating myself. It's okay to be able to look yourself in the eyes and say, I love you. You're loved. You're lovable, even, you know? Um, and the old saying of this too shall pass, it's sometimes feel there's nothing better or there's nothing greater or nothing is ever going to change. Of course it will. And open your mouth and reach out to people. I didn't get a degree by sitting at home. I had to go and ask for help. I had to, I had to go and be taught by people uh, that knew better than me, and so that people would just wake up to the fact that we don't have all the answers sometimes, and it's okay to put your hand up and say, "I need help. Can you help me?" And it doesn't even mean that you know what it is you're looking for help with, but that you just open your mouth and talk to somebody. So important. Um, And things do change, Leon. 20 years ago, I thought, lights out here, I'm wasting my time, I've nothing to give to this world. You know, 20 years on, I'm sitting here with a granddaughter on my lap feeding her a bottle, looking into her eyes, thinking this is the most special thing ever. So things change, things get turned around, and everything will be okay.
Yeah, it bloody well, Richard. And
Yeah.
just to close us out, is there anything anywhere that we should be looking at in terms of books, shows, and how to get in contact with you, Richard?
There's a book behind my head there. It's called Shadows of the Past. It's on Amazon. I have a new book coming out in probably March, April. If nobody told you today, the Mouse Williams loves you. Um, might have robbed that from somebody in America that's recently passed. But it's about love. It's about the 8 pillars of love. So, as I said at the start, the English language robbed us with the word love. You look at the Greek and the Aramaic and the Latin, we've 7 different types of love. And I threw an extra one in just for the book, which is Mouse Williams Love, which is being able to love the unlovable. But yeah, I'm available at reallyheal.com. Uh, Go and have a look. Yeah, I'm on all the social media platforms: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever. Yeah.
So today, yeah, thank you for clarity. Thank you for your courage and your refusal to make healing comfortable at the expense of it being real. For our listeners, if this episode stayed with you, that's usually a sign it's touched something worth tending to. So share it, sit with it, revisit it, because recovery isn't about rushing forward. It's about showing up honestly again and again. I want you to check out our new website. So just launched www.toolighttodark.com. Reach out to us direct at contact@toolighttodark.com. Catch us on socials alongside Richard on TikTok, IG, LinkedIn, etc. Imaginatively titled @toolighttodark as well. So let's keep the conversation moving and fluid as we learn and grow together. This has been episode 25. This too shall pass. Peace, love, and light. Namaste. Thank you, Richard.
Love it.